Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz rematch is fast approaching November the 23rd in Las Vegas, and this is a fight that has lacked a little bit of buzz, and I think it's because the first time around it was a conclusive result and people feel that Deontay Wilder should win again, probably quicker and most likely by a devastating knockout. But does that sort of underestimate the risk that Luis Ortiz poses in this fight? And I think maybe it does. Maybe we're a little too quick to write off a guy who at 40 years old is still regarded as a top 10 fighter, but a fighter on the decline. But that doesn't mean he's not a good fighter, and it doesn't mean he doesn't have a chance in this fight. And that's sort of what I wanted to look at in this fight. What is the case for Luis Ortiz? Because obviously he is the underdog, and Wilder is a long-reigning champion, knocked him out before. But does that mean it will be a repeat? I think so, but maybe not necessarily. So we'll go through some of the things that I've been thinking about in regards to this fight in terms of a Luis Ortiz upset. And I guess the first thing to talk about is that Luis Ortiz has clearly shown he's got the power to hurt Deontay Wilder. Wilder was in all sorts of trouble in round 7 of the first fight. Ortiz hurt him, buzzed him with a nice left hand, but he just wasn't able to close the show. He had about a minute or so to get him out of there. Wilder managed to sort of hold on, get out of the round. So he can hurt him. And if he does hurt him again in this rematch, he needs to be more clinical. He needs to pick his punches, not gas out. And that's another thing that I'll come to. Overall, he's just got to be more clinical in the finish, because obviously after that sort of round 7, Ortiz had unloaded the tank, but he just couldn't get him out of there, and he never recovered. He was gassed out. And that sort of leads me to my next point, which is clearly he has to be in the best possible shape of his career. Effectively, this is last chance saloon really for a title shot. At 40 years old, if he loses this fight with Wilder, it's again at least another 18 months to 2 years for a rebuild to get back to a title shot. In a couple of years' time, Ortiz is going to be 42. It's probably and most likely his last title opportunity. So he's got to make the most of it. And at 40, like a lot of older fighters, Ortiz can fade as 10 rounds or 12 rounds wears on. We saw it in the first fight to some extent. He emptied his tank, and round 7 never recovered, whereas Wilder, the younger man, was able to get his legs back under him, recover, and he ultimately knocked Ortiz out. And Ortiz, from some of the photos that have emerged, you can see here on screen, I'll just run a little bit of a slideshow for the next 20-30 seconds. This is from the recent media workout. He does look like he's whipping himself into some very good condition. Generally, he's been coming in around sort of 236 to 240 for recent fights. He probably needs to be at the lower end of that, and obviously he needs to come in tip-top condition, the best possible condition, because obviously this could be a make-or-break fight for his career. I could well see him retiring after this fight if he doesn't get the win. I know some people think that he could continue to go on in the heavyweight division, but if a title shot is out of reach and he's getting millions of dollars and can cash out from this fight, well then obviously that starts to look like a decent opportunity and maybe the right time. But that's obviously for another day. But let's hope that Ortiz has been doing his road work, that his gas tank is as full as it can be, because he'll need it if the fight again goes late. And it well might. If you actually strip away the Stavern and Brazil knockouts from Wilder's championship run, most of Wilder's championship fights have gone deep, including the first fight with Luis Ortiz. So there's a number of fights where Wilder has got a late knockout, from sort of round 8, round 10, those sorts of rounds later in the fight. So the Brazil and Stavern wins are the exception to what has generally been the norm in Wilder's championship career. So Ortiz has to prepare, and I'm sure he will. But we also can't forget, Luis Ortiz is clearly the better boxer of the two, the better technician. I mean, that was demonstrated in the first fight. Even with the round 5 knockdown, many had Ortiz ahead on the cards before the stoppage. He needs to use every ounce of that experience, his ring craft, in the second fight. Make it work for him to his advantage. And I could again totally see some of the early rounds being very cagey, and many people actually forget that the crowd was booing in the first fight before Wilder dropped Ortiz in that 5th round. But Ortiz has to be cognizant that a low volume fight is something that Deontay Wilder, he doesn't actually mind. It allows him to sit back, conserve his energy, wait for an opening, which he eventually found in that first fight. So Ortiz, to some extent, has to make Deontay Wilder work, keep him moving, keep him turning, don't let him set his feet, and don't let him unfurl that right hand at any opportunity. It will come, but he's got to make sure that his defense is good, and that also Deontay Wilder is maybe throwing these shots off balance, that Deontay Wilder is throwing them recklessly like he did against Tyson Fury, finding fresh air, because the more that Ortiz makes him miss, then Wilder is going to tire, because he puts a lot of energy into those shots. And we did see in that Wilder vs Fury fight in 2018 that Wilder was gassing late on, and part of that can be attributed to Fury making Wilder miss, making him expend huge amounts of energy. And while Ortiz will be unlikely to sort of replicate the general movement around the ring and some of that sort of stuff that Fury does, because he's a bigger man and obviously a much bigger reach, but he can use head movement, feints, and that sort of stuff is going to be important to keep Wilder guessing, and obviously for Ortiz's sake, keep him missing with those power punches, which is going to help drain Deontay Wilder's gas tank. And the tactics are going to be quite interesting for the second time around. Ortiz played a very dangerous, high-stakes game in that first fight. He was trying to punch with Wilder, time him with the left hand, counter him. I mean, sure, he had some success. That 7th round is part of it, but Wilder is expecting that. He says that Ortiz is a very good counterpuncher, and that is pretty much his most dangerous weapon. And here's actually a comment from him on a recent Instagram Live video.
Luis Ortiz's most dangerous trait is he's a counterpuncher. He keeps you on the edge, on your seat. You definitely gotta really plan what you're gonna do, have your next move, because when you're punching, he's coming back with something just like that. You definitely gotta have eye coordination. You gotta have timing on point, and you definitely have to have some type of speed with you. Luis Ortiz, he moves strategically in the ring. He's a great counterpuncher as well, and I like his style as a Cuban. Nobody in the top 10 wanted to fight Ortiz, and they still don't to this day. Many people talk about his age, but ain't nobody trying to whoop that old man ass either. Only me. I whoop young folks and I whoop old folks, and that's just how it is. I love Ortiz as a person. I love him as a father. I respect him a lot. But when we step in that ring, all that gonna go out the window.
So I think Ortiz, he has to look for more than counters, because clearly Deontay Wilder is expecting it. But at the same time, it's easier said than done trying to overcome a reach disadvantage, trying to close the distance against a puncher like Wilder who's, rangy. He will be trying to fight from distance for the most part, and he'll be looking to uncork that right hand at a moment's notice. And he can sort of launch it right across the ring in a flash. So ultimately, maybe this will end up being a better fight than many of us are expecting. I think because the first fight was conclusive, many people just aren't as jazzed for the second fight, but it doesn't mean it's not a good fight. Ortiz still a top 10 fighter, still a good name for Deontay Wilder to get on his record. Is it the fight most heavyweight fans wanted to see? Not necessarily, but it's not a terrible fight. But Ortiz really does, have his work cut out for him. He needs to be in great shape. His tactics maybe need to be a little bit different, because Wilder will be looking for Ortiz to counter. So it'll be interesting to see the adjustments that Ortiz can make, because arguably Deontay Wilder is a better fighter now than he was 18 months ago. And we know that Ortiz is 18 months older. He's now 40 years old. And this could be last chance saloon at the top level for a title shot. What do you make of it? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.